had in the quarterfinals 3 copies of Bramaz in his main deck.
Yeah, David definitely showing the strength of the Cat King. I do think, by the way, that Bramaz is the much better of the Cat Kings.
What is
the one from, I think the problem with, what's his name, Kajimba, whatever the guy.
Oh, from Time Spiral, right?
No, but even before that, there was a different Cat King, the one from Mirrodin Block. It was like 7 mana.
Oh, well, that was probably where the problem with the card was.
It was like,
so constructed.
Yeah, like a 3/4 for 7 that gives your other cats +2/+2 or something.
So David, with a turn 2 Thalia, Guardian of Frey, Robert, turn 1 Deathrite Shaman, turn 2, pays 2 mana to cast Thoughtseize through the Thalia.
Yeah, this Death and Taxes deck, you know, obviously it's always easy to joke, but it is very disruptive. It's got a lot of ways to meaningfully mess up people's game plans.
Looks at a hand of Plains, Wasteland, Swords to Plowshares, Phyrexian Revoker, and Bramaz. So, you know, some high-impact spells, some disruption, a good threat in Bramaz.
You know what I love about these White Weenie players? They have the decency to show up with some beta planes.
Yeah, they often take the planes seriously, which I really appreciate.
No, absolutely. That is just, that's like respecting the craft.
Right. So David follows up with a Phyrexian Revoker, presumably naming Deathrite Shaman, Wasteland to take out the Bayou. And you are seeing some disruption overload.
Now, the Revoker can't actually stop the mana ability, right?
No, it's just name a non-land permanent.
Ah, right. Excellent.
So.
Much disruption.
Yep.
Now, one area that David doesn't really attack, at least game 1, the graveyard. If this Punishing Fire gets going, I mean, obviously, Wasteland can always go after the non-basics, and here we see that again, but.
Yeah, and it's so good to go after his mana when Thalia is in play unchecked.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Marsh Flats the draw for Robert.
David building up to an eventual Bramaz.
Yeah, but I think, I like the way that he's playing this match right now. I think he's better served just attacking Robert's mana while he's constrained. And now Stoneforge Mystic.
The absolute celestial Stoneforge.
And that's going to go get Batterskull.
That joke never gets old.
What, he's going to go get Batterskull?
Yep. It was Stoneforge Mystic.
Who's joking? So Robert now with a 3rd mana. This allows him to potentially break out of Thalia this turn with a variety of removal spells. He also may want to break out of the Phyrexian Revoker as well to unlock his Deathrite Shaman. He also just may need to kill Stoneforge Mystic. So you see, David, this is a great Death and Taxes example. He's got 3 small creatures in play, all of which providing some disruption or pressure, all of which are constraining Robert's development in some way or another.
Yeah. Yeah, you are definitely white. What's Robert going to do to get out of this? He doesn't have access to stuff like Agari Charm.
I mean, Punishing Fire is a really good start if he can pair it with, if he's able to pair it with Grove of the Burn Wolves, of course, but just more removal in general.
Yeah, because I mean, getting that Stoneforge off means that he has at least a 1-turn reprieve before the Batterskull comes down, which means that instead, Bramaz.
Another land for Robert.
What do you think of not attacking with the Revoker there?
It is curious.
I mean, it's okay. I mean, because like obviously the one Revoker shuts down all the Deathrite Shamans.
Yeah, that's the argument. Also, it's possible that he wants to save it as Liliana the Veil food at some point down the line as well. So
it's reasonable.
If you're on the side of wanting to trade here, you should probably err on the, if it's close, probably err on the side of not trading. So we see Abrupt Decay, take down Bramaz. Thalia again, into the red zone. Rashad import the draw.
Wow, just more mana disruption.
There's a Flicker Wisp. See if he wants to slide anything out.
Slide it out. Don't think it affects a ton on this board, other than being a 3/1 flyer. I like the discipline here, though. committing the 3-1 fire to the board so that he can continue his mana denial plan instead of getting greedy and dropping the Batterskull.
Well, he's a little off of being able to drop the Batterskull right now because of the Thalia. But even if that was not an issue, I still like holding a port here. It just combos so well with the Thalia, and I like the pacing of make you answer this kind of stuff that's going on right now. It's going to bleed out some of your removal, and then try to finish out the game with high impact cards.
Yeah, Batterskull, as much as it seems like it should be a creature, it also costs 1 additional.
This is the game plan we were alluding to. Robert with all sorts of powerful tools in this game, but it's not clear he's going to have quite enough time or life to deploy everything.
Yeah, because, I mean, he's killing a creature every turn, but he's just always behind.
Yep. There's an Abrupt Decay finally getting Thalia off the table.
And who knows, maybe this actually means that he's not going to be as choked as he once was. The problem, of course, Legacy Jund without as many lightning bolts as some of the other lesser powered formats.
Yep.
Jund decks.
All right, so Flicker Whips and Phyrexian Revoker into the red zone. This is a lethal attack. Robert's going to trade with the Revoker, and now with Thalia off the table, this frees up Batterskull. If David wants to cast it, he does. Makes a Germ, and now Robert facing 2 lethal attackers. Finds a Grove of the Burn Willows.
It's just a little bit short of mana, though, right?
Well, he may be able to pick up the Punishing Fire and play Liliana this turn.
The problem is he's 1 mana short of being able to pick up the Punishing Fire and shoot the Flicker Wisp and Liliana the Germ.
Well,
he was just a tiny little bit of tempo behind. Now, if he has a 2 mana spell, if he has an Abrupt Decay, he's got chances, but short of that, I think we might be looking at game 2. A very impressive showing by David Bauman.
the perfect execution.
Yeah.
Robert with
And we do.
all the tools that he needs to get out of that, but just not quite enough time, not quite enough life. We're going to be going on to game 2 with David Bauman up a game. Very impressive, you know, the textbook Death and Dice's game plan against a deck with a boatload of removal. Welcome back to the booth, StarCityGames.com, Legacy Open here in Seattle. Patrick Sullivan, Patrick Chapin. It is trivia time.
Absolutely. So recently, Star City's been talking about a book on Commander. Who is the author of this Commander book, this multiplayer book? Let's see, there's got to be a tiny little bit more information though, right? His first, what, can you give him the initials, Benny?
B and S. The man's initials.
Yeah.
So tweet that man's name, again, at SCG Live, hashtag SCG Premium. Star City Games publishing a new book about Commander by this author, one of Virginia's finest, former state champion, influential Star City Games contributor for many years. Putting out a Commander book.
If you're gonna search on Google, I wouldn't search just BS, but I would.
You're gonna turn up a lot of bad hits if you do that. Not the most famous BS search in the world, but again, tweet that answer at SCG Live, hashtag SCG Premium. One correct respondent amongst all the entries will be selected for 6 free months of Star City Games premium content. Let's move on to the sideboards here.
On to the next one. All right, we've got in the sideboard. This is a little bit of disruption. The Jund player has access to Golgari Charm. I mean, Rob's got Golgari Charm, maybe Scavenging Ooze. It's a little slow. Do you think it's possibly plays Python Needle just because he's desperate, being able to hit either an Aether Vial or a Rashad Import? It's not pretty.
Or Stoneforge Mystic or some Astray equipment. I mean, it does
That's
answer.
true. That's true.
It does answer a lot of the problematic cards.
Being able to hit hitting a Jitte or something. And then finally, is there any chance of an Engineer Plague?
I think it is reasonable removal.
Yeah.
It's not the most efficient thing in the world. There are a fair number of humans in the deck.
Definitely.
And a lot of one-timeless creatures as well. So I think Engineer Plague is totally legitimate to bring in. On David's side, there's a Grafdigger's Cage, a Manriki Gazari, a Pithing Needle, a Ratchet Bomb, 2 Aethersworn Canonus, a Spellskite, 2 Oblivion Rings, 2 Rest in Pieces, 2 Enlightened Tutors, 2 Cataclysms. I definitely like Oblivion Ring in this matchup. I think the Spellskite is an excellent addition as it basically shuts down Lightning Bolt as a card that Robert can play productively. I think
Makes Punishing Fire harder to use, too.
absolutely, and I do think that the 2 copies of Cataclysm could be reasonable here as well, as the Jund deck is a lot more slow and cumbersome.
Yeah, plus, I mean, you Cataclysm them, they're not really going to be able to interact with you. They don't have some way to draw up a whole bunch more mana.
Right.
Interesting. So Death and Tax is gaining quite a few tools, but honestly, I think the Jund player, I think Robert's got a lot better chances than perceived from that last game. I mean, he was just 1 mana away, 1 tempo away, This time he's on the play.
Yep. Turn 1 Thoughtseize from Robert reveals a hand with Aether Vial, Cataclysm, Stoneforge Mystic. A lot of powerful tools.
Robert does take a Stoneforge Mystic, but he's still looking at having to beat 1 more.
But beating, each individual creature is not very hard for Robert to answer. It's the collection of the synergies and the amount of time that he has. Dark Confidant to play.
This is pretty big.
Robert. Oh, yeah. Not a lot of answers, just Swords to Plowshares, really.
Yeah, because if David cannot get this Dark Confidant off the table, well, at least he's got something proactive he's doing, something really powerful. But this Dark Confidant is a game plan. Robert can potentially ride this Dark Confidant to some kind of an advantage.
All right. Dark Confidant trigger reveals Liliana the Veil.
And this is good. I mean, if Robert has another land, an untapped land, being able to kill the Stoneforge Mystic right here with value, the risk, of course, is if the Aether Vial plops down a Mother of Runes.
So Robert, deliberating here, also has a Engineered Plague in hand.
Yeah, being able to hit humans is definitely a very reasonable way to go. The problem is, I think you got to save yourself from that Stoneforge Mystic. And as we saw, David does not have the 1-drop.
So Liliana ekes away the Stoneforge Mystic, Dark Confidant across for 2. And David untaps, takes up the Vial.
What's the next step here? I mean, he's starting to fall further behind.
Oh, that's a really good start there. Swords to Plowshares on top of Rashad Port is going to really constrain a lot of Robert's options here. You also see Umezawa's Jitte enter play for David.
Yeah, and the Aether Vial is particularly effective against Liliana, who can often be kind of a sorcery speed spell. Aether Vial flashing things down on the end step.
Yeah, instant speed creature is a very good tool.
Oh, yeah.
See it a lot with Vendilion Click,
Yep.
causing some headaches for Liliana. Liliana takes up Engineered Plague and Batter Skull discarded for the 2 players.
Both players not afraid to drop their heavy hitters.
And now, yeah, the Umezawa's Jitte and that Vial is going to really constrict a lot of what Robert wants to do with his. He has to, almost certainly has to hold up removal through a lot of this. So there is a Thoughtseize from Robert. This warrants David activating his Aether Vial, putting Sarah Avenger into play. The last card in David's hand, Cataclysm, hits the graveyard.
Now, fortunately for Robert, he does have a Lightning Bolt. So this game plan is... So things are actually going all right for Robert. He's got a Liliana. He's got something going. He's a little shy on mana. But he's got David empty-handed with a Liliana growing. Small advantage for Robert.
And Dark Confidant off the top.
Large advantage for Robert.
Sarah Avenger, equipped with the Jitte.
Yeah, now I mean, the absolute most the Sarah Avenger can do is kill that Liliana.
Yeah.
If Robert can find any other way to deal with the Sarah Avenger, though, he'd prefer that.
So Bloodbraid Elf revealed to the Dark Confidant for Robert, and a hand just flush with the removal.
Now, if you're Robert here, how greedy do you get? I mean, there's no way you Bloodbraid Elf, right?
I don't think so, no.
Because you want to keep that Liliana. The thing is, though, it's not doing anything for you. I mean, you don't want to actually activate the discard element. Looks like he might not have a fourth land, though.
There's Abrupt Decay for the Sarah Avenger. Yeah, he definitely wants to keep his Liliana. I can't help but wonder if it's worth, you know, doing something like using the Abrupt Decay on the Aether Vial, because Robert is so flush with the removal. The biggest concern I would have in this game is just, you know, what happens if David has a good draw, is able to put Umezawa's Jitte on something, hits you, kills your Planeswalker, starts shooting down your guys. Even though David is empty-handed, it's possible the Vial is actually one of the more threatening things going on. As you see David draw and cast Thalia.
Looks like Robert does have a Wasteland, although it's a little daunting, the prospect of playing a Bloodbraid Elf into a Thalia. My guess is that if he were going to go that route, he would use the Liliana on the Thalia. But it looks like he is going to just chance it. Maelstrom Pulse, sure.
Another plus from Liliana here. Robert discards Golgari Charm. And Dark Confidant attacks.
Dark Confidant taking a little bit of a toll on Robert's life total, but those extra cards are coming up big.
Yep. Uses the port inside the upkeep. Reveals Marsh Flats to Dark Confidant. And I think we might see Bloodbraid Elf.
Robert fetching up a Bayou. Plenty of mana. What's he looking to do here now? I mean, obviously he's got an advantage. What's the best way to pad his lead?
Well, at this point, it's just protecting himself from getting hit by the Umezawa's Jitte. That is the only thing that's going on right now that gives David any sort of shot. Remember, he lost his Batterskull earlier in the game. And Robert has a lot of protection with Liliana the Veil, but that Aether Vial is there, potentially looming. And also in speeding up the clock, very good for Robert here, and you see him deploy Deathrite Shaman and Tarmogoyf. So some good additions to the board.
And it looks like not the smallest Goyf in the world.
Yep. Some artifacts in there. Once you start getting down, you know, once you were past land, sorcery, creature, land, that sorcery, instant, creature, land, that's the base. And when you're ever getting past that, then it's just gravy for Tarmogoyf. Mother Runes off the top, but that offers no real help long-term to David.
Yeah, I mean, at most, it eats a 1 Liliana activation.
If even that, I mean, Robert could actually start the turn by just using Bloodbraid Elf and seeing if he finds something to kill the Mother Runes for even more free than what Liliana represents.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, Robert's got to at least be wondering, is there any way I can win this turn?
Yeah, it's got to be on his radar if possible. Here comes the Bloodbraid Elf. Reveals Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt takes out Mother of Runes. And now we're going to see a lot of damage trucking on in.
Yeah, he doesn't quite have enough to win this turn, but he does have enough to put David completely up against the wall.
Although I suppose he actually could have used Liliana and just bolted David and killed him that turn, but no big deal.
And now they did see each other's deck lists beforehand, so David knows that Robert does not have Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn, in his deck.
Yeah, but still.
A potential out for Dark Confidant, of course.
Yeah. A huge advantage generated there by Robert, and we're going to be going on to game 3. Both games 1 and 2 so far, basically textbook games on the way each pilot wants the matchup to go. The Death and Taxes player wanting to get out in front, having some mixture of annoying disruption, mana denial, some good threats, and the Jund deck wanting to get out on the front foot with mana ideally, with Dark Confidant, or sorry, Deathrite Shaman rather, or just making land drops, using removal to stay above pace, and then winning the game with more powerful cards like Liliana the Veil and Bloodbraid Elf.
Absolutely. Relatively quick match so far, just 18 minutes in, and we're already into game 3. But Death and Tax is not one to just sit around and hang out.
No.
You know, shuffle their poker chips.
No, very little shuffling, just Stoneforge Mystic, really.
But, well, they are shuffling. You and I were discussing this earlier. I wanted to fill everybody else in. The question we had, the debate is, what Magic card, out of every Magic card legal in Vintage right now, what Magic card is the most undercosted?
So, to frame the discussion, Ancestral Recall, printed at
One.
1 blue mana. Let's assume that Jace's Ingenuity is the correct cost for that effect. It's blue 3.
Right, or even one that could target, you know, a Jace's Ingenuity that could
Right.
target the opponent.
Yeah,
Still properly costed at about 5.
Yeah, so we'll say that Ancestral is there's a 4 mana discrepancy there.
Yep.
And 4 mana is quite a high discrepancy.
Absolutely. 1 mana is a high discrepancy.
Right. So you and I debated this
Time
earlier.
Walk, but the difference between Time Walk and Time Warp, 3 mana.
If you assume Time Warp is fairly costed, and that's probably the right cost for that effect if you wanted to show up sometimes in Tier 1 constructed, but not all the time, 5 mana is probably about right. What is the card where there's the biggest discrepancy? You and I actually both, to inform the viewers at home, you and I actually both gave an answer different than Ancestral Recall.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Ancestral Recall, 4 mana undercosted, very, very good. But I think both of us have legitimate claims at cards that could potentially, you could make a case, should be more than 4 mana.
Yeah, so tweet at
More.
us, let me know, let us know. I'm curious to see if anyone out there duplicates either my response or your response to this question.
And keep in mind, this is not the prize thing. This is just
Separate,
for kicks.
Separate theory crafting.
Yeah,
going
this
on
is for
here.
people who are either vintage players, potential card designers, or neither.
Yeah.
Turn 1 Plains, Mother of Runes. David off to the races already.
Pluto Delta here from Robert. And actually what's intriguing is both the cards that you and I named, not really vintage superstars. So it's going to throw some people off the scent.
I don't
feel.
know. I don't know. I'm not sure I agree with that.
Let's imagine that the parameters are, imagine this card is reprinted in a core set. It's going to be legal and standard. What should the mana cost be? That's sort of the framing.
Yep.
Basic swamp here from Robert, and
Which means no lightning bolt, which means the Mother of Runes is going to be allowed to do what she does when she's allowed to do it.
so on the other side of the bracket, Greg Mitchell up game 1.
Robert, Thoughtseize taking the Spellskite. Spellskite, Mother of Runes is a potentially very dangerous combination.
Although this is a really dangerous combination for Jund as well, as you see. Stoneforge Mystic combined with Mother of Runes. This is going to possibly be enormous trouble for Robert. Now, he's a little bit less susceptible in the post-board games to Mother of Runes as he has access to both Golgari Charm and Engineered Plague, but this is still just such a fast opening that the tempo might be too much.
Yeah, I mean, this is turn 2, and he doesn't have the Golgari Charm.
Oh.
Which means David is going to be able to have Mom hang out with that other girl, the Stoneforge Mystic, and bring the Batterskull home.
All right. Oh, my God. There is an
Wow.
sensor.
So this is why you can't just wait. Legacy's not a format where you can just crack fetch lands whenever you want.
Oh, boy.
This is devastating. Wow, this might be over before it
And
started.
David just pumps the fist here. Still have to shuffle the deck. It's still a
Devastating.
surge, but Aven Mines,
Absolutely backbreaking.
Aven Mindsense are another piece of the puzzle in terms of the deck's overall disruption on top of marginal bodies theme.
Yeah, very marginal bodies.
2 power flyer, but there's some decks where this is just a really annoying thing to work through, especially in conjunction with things like Thalia.
Aven Mind Sensor, probably only the 64th most messed up Future Sight card. An awful lot of ones ahead of it.
Right.
Spellweaver Volute.
Emphasis on the word awful.
Underworld, or Bridge from the
Bridge from Below.
Tarmogoyf.
All the things with random stuff on the tagline.
Quite frankly, Grove of the Burn Willows.
Yep.
The River of Tears.
See Punishing Fire here. David not willing to use the Mother of Runes to protect the Mind Sensor as it's already done its work.
Transfigure.
Sarah Avenger right on time here, turn 4. Plays a second Caracas untapped, and now another Stoneforge Mystic. And you can see why David was not willing to use his Mother of Runes to protect the Mind Sensor. 2 much better cards to attempt to protect here in Stoneforge Mystic and Sarah Avenger.
Yeah, I mean, he can just ride these to victory. There's just really not a whole lot that Robert is able to threaten each turn.
What about the negative power double striker?
The Char Rumbler. Absolutely. That's just good, clean fun.
If you read the FAQ on that card, it actually says something along the lines of, this is not a typo. It literally has negative power.
Oh, see, that's not even as bad as the Force of Savagery. Force of Savagery is 2 and a green for an 8/0, and it says in the FAQ, yeah, it just dies.
All right, so Robert only plays a land and says go. Going back to David's turn here, is able to cheat in the Sword of Fire and Ice and attack with Stoneforge Mystic with Sword of Fire and Ice on it, a Sarah Avenger, Mother of Runes still at the ready to protect, an Abrupt Decay for the sword at least.
It's a decent start. It's going to be a tough grind, but you got to start somewhere, and that sword was going to make things just really unworkable. Robert having trouble killing any of David's creatures, though, because he generally can't play more than 1 spell per turn. And you know how Mom is.
Yep. Wasteland, takes out Wasteland. And this is another good example of, David's game plan here. It's not like Robert doesn't have tools that matter. It's just his mixture of stuff is very frustrating to get through.
Yep.
There's a Tarmogoyf for Robert. And now Sarah Avenger is going to come into play big time.
Oh yeah, flying right over. Yeah, no. I mean, it's pretty clear from these white decks. There's 2 things you don't. There's 2 things you don't talk about, and that's death and taxes.
Yep. A second Sarah Avenger, just trying to outpace Robert's removal here.
See, we saw Punishing Fire just cut the elf deck to pieces, just shred them. White deck, much more resilient. Sarah Avengers, 3 toughness, Mother of Runes, makes things very difficult.
Bramaz, equipment, there's a lot of,
There's a lot of subtle strength to the death and taxes in terms of just frustrating people's ability to interact with you, people who are counting on being able to.
Is Punishing Fire good against death and taxes? Sure, but it has a lot of sideways ways of ameliorating the impact.
Oh yeah.
Here's an Engineer Plague, which
This
actually
is big.
may name Angel here, or Human. Angel would allow it, maybe Punishing Fire here to start making some inroads, or he takes care of some humans here.
Now the key though, even if he hits Mother of Runes, which is great, but the Stoneforge Mystics, remember, are core. One of the core creature types in Magic.
Not C-O-R-E, but K-O-R.
Yes, K-O-R. A lot of people don't realize this, but the core,
Oh my goodness. Rest in peace off the top here. That's going to nuke Deathrite Shaman and Tarmogoyf effectively.
And Punishing Fire at the same time.
What a mess.
Yeah. Absolutely devastating. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize this about the core. They live in the mountains, despite the fact that they're very plain-like, and they're the ones who do all the hooking. Where they're like sliding on the zip lines from cliff to cliff.
The Hookmaster, for example.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're all about the grappling hooks. They are not one of the most commonly reprinted creature types, but pretty sweet nonetheless.
They show up from time to time. Absolutely. Robert trying to figure out what to do, basically with his last access to his graveyard as a resource. He has the Deathrite Shaman that can make mana, the Punishing Fire in hand, but this is the cherry on top of the annoying disruption plus weird clock cake that is death and taxes.
Yep. There's got to be an awful lot of people sitting at home who are just happy as a clam that this is all going down.
Well, there is something charming about this. It's not quite like goblins. It's not quite like elves in terms of it being a tribal synergy deck, but it does feel like a weird, eclectic mix of oddball synergies over the last 20 years of Magic, which is, in my mind, the most charming legacy decks.
Yeah, it is a lot more pleasing than this hate bear. It's sort of a hate bear deck, but this one at least has like some flyers, some ground creatures, some different keywords, some tricks, whereas like a lot of hate bear decks were, I just thought it would be good to play 28 2-drops.
Yep.
Tarmogoyf, the last good thing Robert has going for him, no more.
Yep. And the final ignominy of all of this is Stoneforge Mystics entering the red zone against a Tarmogoyf.
Oh yeah.
The final humiliation.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, one possible way to start the comeback is with like a Maelstrom Pulse on those 2 Sarah Avengers.
That would be a great start. But again, there's still, these long-term issues of How does your deck operate against Rest in Peace? That itself warrants a removal spell.
Yeah, and he's only got one Maelstrom Pulse.
So Robert takes the full hit here.
Golgari Charm. Could you at least get rid of Rest in Peace? Abrupt Decay.
And there's a concession, just can't help the Flyers. David Bauman with a timely Rest in Peace, a really well-executed game plan.
Oh, yeah.
He wins 2 games to 1. He's going to be moving on to the finals.